It has been another day of volatile protests in the streets of Toronto, but there was no repeat of yesterday's shocking violence, in part because more than 600 protesters were behind bars. Unlike yesterday, today police moved swiftly and some say with too much force. But as the chaos continued in the streets, it was a very different story inside the security zone, where Prime Minister Stephen Harper announced a major deal to stabilize the global economy. Once again, we have extensive coverage tonight, starting with CTV's John Vanavali-Rao and another unforgettable day in Summit City.
It was a distinct change in police tactics, dispersing a crowd with a puff of tear gas and making arrests, even though protesters were being peaceful.
We came from Montreal to protest against poverty, against war, and this is the reaction.
Police clearly taking no chances and unwilling to see a repeat of Saturday's rampage, being blamed on anarchists, many of whom appear to have come from outside the province.
We have, in essence, been dealing with a hardcore group of organized criminals.
Overnight, there were hundreds of arrests. Around 70 people were hauled away from the campus of the University of Toronto. Many are French-Canadian. Police said some were from Montreal.
Back up. We cannot protest peacefully.
Items seized have been bottles with unknown substances, black clothing, bricks, bats, sharpened sticks, items you don't need for a weekend in Toronto.
Police also arresting 2 people seen springing up from the Toronto sewer system. Some in the downtown claiming they are being subjected to illegal searches. This man was found with bleach.
It's corrosive, and thrown in somebody's face, it's a potential weapon, so we're not going to allow it into the zone.
Police casting a wide net during an hours-long showdown at a busy intersection.
Shame on you!
The decision was simply made to detain everyone, including members of the media.
And a lot of the people in there were just like bystanders, shoppers, peaceful protesters. Like, I didn't see anyone throw anything, no one being like at all aggressive.
What we do is in the best interest of the public, and sometimes it doesn't always work out perfectly for all.
And as some were being taken in, others were being let go from a makeshift detention center.
There are tons of people in there. They're pissed off because a lot of people weren't even protesters.
Police, though, appear willing to detain just about anyone and wait to sort out later if they were a threat. John Vanavali-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Once again, CTV's national affairs correspondent Lisa Laflamme spent the day following the protesters and police, and she joins us now overlooking the streets of Summit City. Well, Lisa, certainly not the violence we saw yesterday, but nevertheless a very tense day. Now, you and cameraman Stéphane Brisson found yourselves in the middle of it. Describe what happened today.
There are not enough adjectives, Sandy, to describe exactly what happened tonight specifically. By the last final large protest, there was a sit-in of about 500 people at a major Toronto intersection, and all of a sudden, police, multi-layers, it was as if they brought their entire arsenal, put it on show, and basically boxed people into that intersection. I remember at one point looking around and realizing there's no way out. Every single north, south, east, and west, there was no way out for people. And at that point, they actually started coming into the crowd and just plucking people out and arresting them, including my cameraman, Stéphane Brisson. They were just pulling people out. Hundreds of people arrested, plastic handcuffs, and pulled aside and photographed and identified that way. It was just a surreal event unfolding, and all of this with no warning. Not one time did anyone get on a blowhorn, which they had strapped to their hips, and tell people, leave or be arrested. Not one time.
Well, actually, Lisa, while you were talking, we were looking at video of you and Stéphane. Okay, now, yesterday, police held back. Today, a more active presence. Will they be criticized for changing the tactics?
There'll certainly be questions, Sandy, as to why yesterday they seemed to allow rioters to take over main streets in the city of Toronto. Today it started out very differently. They were very heavy-handed. In the end, it was intimidation and plastic handcuffs that ended this. But very different day today.
All right, thank you, Lisa. CTV's Lisa Laflamme in downtown Toronto. We'll go back to Lisa later on in this newscast. Well, the most violent incident of the day happened at a temporary prison far from the downtown core, where some of the protesters who were calling for the release of those already detained ended up behind bars themselves. CTV's Omar Sachedino witnessed all the drama unfold, and he joins us now with the details. Omar?
Sandy, so many times with these protests, we've seen how soon things can change, and that's certainly what happened today. A protest that began peacefully quickly took a sharp turn. As marchers approach the temporary processing center where hundreds of protesters are being detained, police in full riot gear were ready to contain them.
Solidarity! So! Solidarity! So! Solidarity! So!
At first peaceful, the scene quickly turned chaotic. The shots and smoke, so-called muzzle blasts containing individual applications of tear gas. Police wrestled with protesters and made several arrests. After a brief lull, another jolting turn. Activists on bicycles in a dramatic standoff with police, demanding the release of more detainees.
Peaceful protest! Peaceful protest! Peaceful protest! Peaceful!
The confrontation much calmer, but extremely tense.
We showed our good faith. People are coming out, but we cannot release them while you're blocking the streets.
And eventually they did. And in fact, after that crowd dispersed, we saw several other detainees being released. Most were not charged, but still, there are several hundred that remain at that facility tonight.